Alright guys, welcome to the lofting tutorial. In this video I'm going to show you how to loft basically a sketch, two sketches in this case. We'll be lofting these two pieces together such that you get something that looks like this. And so lofting is essentially you telling the computer or the computer software that you want to join two sketches together in 3 dimensions, and in doing so you can create complete bodies with simple sketches. In this case we are looking at a side pod, so I started with something like this. We have a sketch, two sketches here that were extruded on the upper sections in the X and the XY plane, and over here essentially is what would be housing the radiator right here in this section. If we were to look at the top view right here, the radiator would go right here, and we have the front here. So what we want to do is enclose this. We want a complete structure. We don't just want a ugly extruded sketch. So kind of what I'm showing you here is what you could expect. So let me get rid of the translucency or opacity of the object here, so you can see what it really looks like. So in this view you can see it's enclosed. I went from this here, from this view here, no, it's this view here. Went from this to this, and you can see I have the radiator models in there as well. And the whole idea is that this will sit on the side of the car, and so what I will be showing you then is essentially how to loft. And so I will be completing the bottom section of it, and bear with me as I struggle. Sometimes I may struggle, but let me explain a little bit here. So what I have here in the middle is another sketch. So what I decided to do is create an additional sketch in this plane here. So you can kind of see the outline I made here. What I decided to do is to kind of sketch out my general shape on the Y, or in the vertical component here, and then I would join these faces to this new sketch here on each side. That was my strategy on how to do it, so that I got the shape that I wanted. If you can see here, these blue lines are what are called rails. So essentially what I did was draw a bunch of lines in 3D. So essentially they're not constrained to one specific plane. You can see that they move in every direction, essentially the X, Y, and Z. And the whole idea is that I am joining these edges here, and I'm telling the computer-aided software what path I want it to travel along to complete this loft, the joining of these two sketches. Otherwise, if you had no lines or guides, and in the software they're called rails, if I had no rails, the software may get confused and may do some goofy stuff, especially with complex geometry or rough edges or weird edges. It's not, as you can see, it's not like we're joining a square with a circle. We're joining a very, in the mind of the computer, random sketch in terms of shape to the other. And so these lines here are helping guide it. Otherwise, it might not come out exactly how you envisioned. So here, this is an idea of what I essentially did on this top part here. I created a sketch, as you can see, in this bottom part. And this will be our bottom piece, where I hope to join this face here in this face to the other side here to complete our structure. Now, however I make this sketch is how the design will be at this section here. So it does matter how you make the sketch, because that's how you will see it when it's actually made. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to start off with, I am using Fusion 360. You can do this on SolidWorks. It's generally the same principle, just a different interface and possibly different errors, because sometimes this can create errors in the software. But on Fusion, as well as Inventor too, you can do it on Inventor. But I like Fusion because there's a lot more flexibility in how to do lofts. So we'll start off with the functions that we have available. So if we were to go here, we have solid. So this will create a solid structure, and we have a loft function. It won't show up for you here. It'll actually be in the create drop down bar, and you'll see loft here, and you can kind of see this is a simple demonstration here, but it's joining a square with a circle. So that's basically what we're doing. We're joining our two sketches to make that complete body. And if you want, you can click on these three dots here and pin it to the toolbar, which will pop it up right here. So if we hit loft, it's asking us to choose profiles. In this case, our profiles will be this guy here, this guy there. Okay, and as you can see, it created a body. However, it is not smooth at all. I think you can see it's very obvious that this isn't going to work. And this right here demonstrates the purpose of rails. Rails are going to tell the computer software how to how to join it. Not just to draw lines and just go straight across, but we want some curvature. Obviously this is really bad. And this might give me an error, but let's see if we can join this piece here. Yeah, so that gave me an error. If I were to do the other side here, lock this here. Yeah, it's not good. It's giving me an error, most likely because of the complexity of this shape here. And without rails, the computer is just confused on how to join those pieces. Okay. So, what I am going to do is I'm going to create rails. And actually, before I get into that though, the other thing that might be helpful for you, it will take some practice, but I found it of potential use. I'm not very familiar with the surface functions on Fusion, but I am familiar with the form functions. And in the form functions, essentially what you can do is create a body, and it leaves faces, as you can see here. And with these faces, it gives you the ability to pull them, essentially mold your body however you want it. And they give you the ability to choose some generic ones to start with. But in this case, they also have the loft function, which is only available on Fusion. It's not available on Inventor, and I don't believe it has this functionality on SolidWorks. But if we were to choose a loft here in the form section, as you can see, I know this is ugly, but just as a just to describe what this function does, I can loft it the same way. It does the same loft as with the solid, except it's putting faces onto the surface, and it gives me the ability here to edit the amount of faces. and then I can put OK, and if I want, I can edit this. Okay, as you can see here, it's giving me a little toolbar here, and I can pull it. Now, on this complex geometry, it's kind of difficult. Obviously, it would not be efficient to try to join all these edges and pull every single face the way you want it, because when you change one thing, it moves all the other faces because they're constrained to those edges. However, for more simple geometry, it may be helpful. Or if you complete a successful loft that doesn't look like crap like this one does, you can do a good loft, leave the faces on here, and make small adjustments on the faces. Maybe the loft didn't come out exactly how you wanted it, but you could go ahead and grab a face and, tug it a little bit. Maybe it needs to be slightly higher due to those rails not being placed exactly where they need to be. You just make small adjustments here. So that's just an example of the form functionality, and I can show you a little more once I complete the rails properly. Okay, so we'll undo that. So, alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and create rails. So what I'm going to do is create a sketch, and beforehand actually, you want to make sure you go to your preferences here. So you want to click on your name or your account, go to preferences here, and you want to go to design, and make sure that this box is checked in, allow 3D sketching of lines and splines. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do 3D sketches, and you're going to be wondering why and getting annoyed. Make sure that's checked. Okay, so what we're going to do is create a sketch, and I'm just going to choose this plane. It doesn't necessarily matter, I don't think. And I'm going to go ahead and create a spline. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to project. Projecting geometry essentially allows you to click on geometry that's already been made, sketches that's already been made. The reason it's not automatically there is that it may get in your way and you may not want the geometry projected, and so they instead give you the ability to click on it so that you have the reference there for you when you're doing these lines or other design sketches. So I'm also going to project that as well. Okay, so now that I have that, I'll go ahead and create my spline. Okay, and I'll start about right here. Okay, and then I want to join it here. So as you can see, I chose this plane to work on, but if you look at this view, it actually gives me the ability to lock on this sketch even though it's not on that horizontal plane here. So unlike Inventor, where you have to specifically, there will be a drop down here where it's a sketch and you have to click 3D sketch. In Fusion, it's a little weird. It's kind of annoying because it can be confusing at times, but basically you just make a regular sketch and you change your view, and as long as you're allowing 3D sketching on the preferences, then you can go ahead and grab another sketch here. So I am choosing a spline. The reason I'm choosing a spline is that I can add points into it and use those points to pull it to how I want it. So I'm going to put this here because this is the outer section. And yeah, it looks about right, and I'll go ahead and check that. Okay. So as you can see, we now have a line that is connecting the sketch here to this sketch. This is our rail, and what I'm going to do is just go ahead and create a bunch of these. It really doesn't hurt. the number that you make doesn't really hurt. The more you add, just the more work it is. But however, it's going to follow more as to how you want it. The more guides, the more exact it is. You know, that should make sense. I'm going to go ahead and add just a good few. I think more at the edges where the part meets at the end seems to be more necessary than necessarily in the middle. That's what I found for the other section. So I'll go ahead and make one here. Yeah, it looks about right there. Doesn't have to be perfect right now because you can make adjustments. You can move these points later on. It's just the whole idea is just to have them. It's just to have them there for now. So it's better off to do it all at the same time. Yeah, we want to grab on this right here. Okay, grab right here. Good. Right there. We'll go ahead and do this edge right here. Okay. So, now we have our rails. Now, what I will do is I'll go from the top section here, and I will line them up so they're not necessarily at this angle. I'm not 100% sure if it matters, but I'm just going to make sure that they're not at crazy angles. Like, it wouldn't make sense if I had a line here and it traveled all the way over there. It will probably end up creating errors or make the geometry look weird. In this case, it actually doesn't look too bad. It looks almost perpendicular to these surfaces. I'll probably shift them just a little bit though, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch of my 3D lines, and I will be modifying these. So I'm going to go ahead, I right clicked on that line, and I'm going to hit move copy. Okay, so now I'm going to select this point here. I'm going to move this point. Okay, that's not working. Okay, let's try it this way. There's gotta be, okay. I might have to be in the actual sketch itself to edit. I might have been mistaken. Let's see here. Let's move this guy. Yes. Okay. Okay. So you have to be editing the sketch. You can't just finish the sketch and try to move it. Okay. So I'm going to move that. That's constrained there. That looks good to me. Roughly good. Okay. I'm going to go to this line here. I want to move that point. Move that. I'll bring it to about right there. That looks pretty good. Okay. Okay. Take a look at this line here. Move this. Right. We'll move it at this. Okay. Sometimes it could be a little finicky. We'll go ahead and move that. And it's constrained already, so I can move it all the way over here, but it's still on the line. And I'll hit OK there. So I'll be doing this pretty much, looks like, for all of them. So actually, it's probably best to click the point first, and then hit move copy, and then we'll just snap on that part. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this for all of them. For this outer edges, I think I'll leave it like that, just because it has to span out that way. Okay. So now we have that. Now we need to add some curvature to these, because we don't want the rails to just be straight lines, otherwise this is going to look very edgy. And that's not what we want. Okay, so I am going to click on this line, and I'm going to insert spline fit points. Okay, and I found in this case, it just depends on what you're making. I'm just going to add 2, because that should just be enough. Okay, and I'm going to hit escape to get out of that function. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm in this, make sure you're in the YZ plane. so that you're not rotating, so that you're not moving it in other planes as well. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to figure out how to do this. But move that guy up there. Okay, then I want to move this guy. Okay, go about right there. So just keep moving it till you get to basically how you want it. Okay. Take a look at that, and that looks pretty good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that for all of them. Okay, so bear with me as I go ahead and do the same thing to all the lines. Okay, and you can kind of see when I was making those changes, kind of rotated this about. So when I'm done, I'll fix this so it's not all curvy. In the meantime, let's continue focusing on this here. Okay. Okay, so now that's done. Let's look at it from the top again, or the bottom of the piece. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move this up like that. Yep. Make sure there's nothing crazy going on here. So I'm going to straighten this guy out a bit here. Like that. Okay, looks good. We'll change this a bit. Yep, like that. Same thing for this one here. Smoothing that guy out. Cool. Same thing here. Yep. Like so. Yep. Alrighty. Now we have our rails. Hopefully this works. If it doesn't work, it means that we either need more rails or there's something wrong with our sketch. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how form lofting works. Choose these sketches here. You see we have errors. Doesn't know what that could do. See, it's intersect itself. You kind of see it does. It's cutting in. Doesn't know what to do. Right. We're going to go ahead and select rails. And we're going to go ahead and select all these lines we have. And if this works, you will see it trying to form around it. There you go. Okay. Let's select that line. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Nearly perfect. Not exactly perfect, but I think you get the concept here. So, in this case, you can kind of see it's kind of going over our edges. So what this would need would probably be an additional rail right here, so that the CAD software understands, well, at least I found it to be this way, that if you add a rail where this is failing to conform to the sketch, add a rail there and the computer will have a better idea of how to shape it. Same thing here. It'd probably be beneficial to have a rail along a little bit on the inside here and drop it down to avoid that overlapping. Same thing here with this. If we were to have this here and accept that, it still needs a little bit of working, but I think you get the concept here. We get this shape here, and we would do the same thing across there. Now, and then you're able to pull these faces too if you need to. Now, this is a little rough. I did it just real quick. It will require most likely me to carefully look and make sure all these rails I made make sense, which is why you get this kind of wavy structure, because some of the rails might be higher or lower than the others, and so the computer is like trying to follow up and down how the rail path was going. So that might need working if you're having a little bit of, I guess you could call it kind of warpage, it looks like almost. But that's the form method, or you could do it. The other thing, actually, is you see how this is curved out, and then it kind of goes, I would say, what is it, concave? It's concave, and then it goes back up. That'd be why you're getting that weird, why I'm getting that weird, kind of like bumpiness on the surface, and I'm more so looking for a flat surface. So that would have to be lowered and just make sure it looks a little bit flatter. Now if I were to do solid, select the sketch here, select that, same idea. We'll select our rails, and because it's not the form, you don't get all those lines, so it looks a lot cleaner. So this might be better. It really depends on just what you're working with, but this is a good way to see much more clearly. And actually, it appears like in this method, it lofted it perfectly. There's no overlapping. So we'll finish that. And yeah, actually, that is darn perfect. So actually that makes me really happy. And I'm not going to show you this, but it would be the same concept to match these sides. Rails, loft it. If you're getting errors, you need either more rails, or your rails aren't actually touching the edges. Your rails have to touch the edges because they're defining the outer limits or the inner limits of no, the perimeter of your loft. If you have lines going on the outside or you have lines going on the actual surface, that's not gonna work. It's gonna result in intersecting surfaces. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I might want to edit this curvature here to kind of flatten it out there, but yes. Another thing, I guess I might as well just show you my mistakes. Now that I did that and I realized that would work. What I had done here is I had made a sketch and I extruded it a little bit, so you can kind of see it's kind of flat here. Just going from this, you don't have to extrude that sketch. I made that mistake and I learned now you don't have to. I was getting errors though, which is why I did it. But if this works successfully, then this should work successfully too, so I'll be making these tweaks. But hopefully this helped you. This is the side pod of our car. So it's looking really good, and I'm excited. And hopefully this lofting tutorial will give you an idea on how to do simple lofts and more complex lofts like these. So thanks for watching, and have a nice night.